Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another Giving Circle Spotlight. I am your host, Taisha Ty Wilson, Director of Engagement here at Philanthropy Together. And joining me today, I have David Burt, who is the founder for the Flashlight Giving Circle. And we are going to talk about their uniqueness today. They are the first giving circle to support investigative journalists. And I'm so like, even just that, the title alone, Flashlight, David, and what you all fund and support is just so interesting. And I'm excited to chat with you. So thank you so much for being here with us, sharing your story. Congratulations on all the success of your giving circle so far. So why don't you just jump right on in, please introduce yourself, tell us your name, your role as part of the Giving Circle, and just a little bit of background and overview of the circle itself.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm excited to jump into it. So I'm David Burt, as you mentioned, one of the founders at Flashlight, which funds investigative journalists. And a little bit of the background, I've worked, in the media industry for a good while, specifically on the business side, trying to figure out how to fund, good quality journalism. And one thing that keeps on, one thing that comes up a lot in the industry is just how investigative reporting is really hard to fund. Of course, investigative reporting, this is the stuff where someone might spend a month, 2 months, a year kind of running down some pieces of information, trying to uncover things that aren't known to the public. So it's very costly and sometimes leads nowhere, sometimes leads to something that's very important, but isn't read by a lot of people. So if you're looking to, if you're starting from square one and say, how am I going to build the most profitable media business, your first idea isn't investigative journalism, even though that's so important to society. Everything from, you hear about Watergate or Spotlight, these massive stories that get lots of attention, or smaller ones like, someone finds that there's lead in the water in a small community in Georgia, and that has such a massive impact on the local community, and things like that just don't arise if there's not investigative journalists going and poking around and looking out for various communities. And so we knew that, we got together, a handful of friends who have worked in media, kind of know about this dearth and this kind of opportunity to find new ways to fund, and decided that, we learned about the Giving Circle model, which is so interesting and appealing, involving the community in fundraising. And so we decided we may as well see if we can apply this Giving Circle model to journalism. So that's a little bit of a taste.
Thanks for sharing that. So a lot of, including myself, when we think of the media, social media, the news, those are all the places that, folks get their news today. But it sounds like investigative journalists are really the ones that are uncovering the deep kind of local unique issues that's not like mainstream. And so I think for giving circles who are very boots on ground and forward thinking and trying to find issues that are underfunded, or organizations that are underfunded. I love the idea of us investing in leaders who are challenging us to think differently, who are working to bring broader awareness to these kind of these local, hyper local issues. And so can you tell me the story behind like the name itself? When I think of Flashlight, I'm trying to bridge the Flashlight, the name of your giving circle, and what you fund together. I feel like it's a story behind that.
Yes, so Spotlight is often a kind of a metaphor that's used for investigative journalism, and there's the movie about the Washington Post kind of group called Spotlight, and the metaphor of light is sort of like shining a light on things that would otherwise be hidden. And so we like the idea of flashlight because, anyone can hold a flashlight. And so it kind of democratizes being able to be involved in the process. And so with the Giving Circle, everyone is able to make a small donation, be involved in kind of selecting the journalist who's going to go out and do the work. So it's just a metaphor with light that you often see with journalism, and trying to connect it to the community driven aspects of a giving circle.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your granting process. How many, were y'all primarily, or your members are all across the US? And how do y'all give out annual grants, or how often do your members give? How much? Just a little bit more on just the process, your granting process.
Yeah, so we've run 2 pilot grant rounds so far. We're still small. We have folks who are based all across the U.S. and even someone who's based in Colombia. And our current setup is we're asking folks to make a quarterly recurring donation. So we're asking for $100 quarterly. That's a suggested donation, but folks are able to donate whatever they like. And so, yeah, and then we're doing quarterly grant cycles. So we found that is a nice cadence, because it enables us to have some sort of repetition where we can learn at some kind of relatively rapid cycle, and also make a lot of small grants. And in the investigative journalism space, particularly for freelance reporters, a lot of these folks are kind of using money out of their own pocket for things like, booking a flight or staying at a hotel. And these are often like small dollar things, but small grants can actually make a big impact in enabling people to go and do the work. So $1,000 can actually enable someone to go look into something that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. So we're starting small and planning to kind of grow gradually over time.
Thanks for sharing that, your growth plan, because I think that that's realistic. We always share with folks just you have your journey and how you launch and how big or how small that you start. All of that is contingent on the culture, your members, and how and just your own personality of your giving circle. And I think that that's just something to note. I'm wondering, y'all are a new giving circle. You just launched last year, David. You went through the Launchpad, shameless plug. You went through our Launchpad.
It was so useful. Mm-hmm.
Launchpad For You training program, launched in April 2022, and have already supported a individual journalist. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your first grant? What was that like? Who did you fund? And what is a little bit more about just your first grantee?
Yes. So our first grantee, her name's Melba Newsome. And so she's an environmental, a reporter based out of the Carolinas covering environmental justice. So it's interesting, like in the journalism space, we've decided to fund journalists as opposed to particular stories. So this enables Melba to go and run down different angles. She might, hit some dead ends here and end up covering something else. But she's just done a lot of amazing work. Like an example of a story she's published in the past is the impact of rising seas and their impact on a local community in South Carolina. So we're thrilled to support Melba in the first round, and it was, we just kind of went through the process that the general process that you with Launchpad kind of outlined. We kind of collected applications. We actually did like a screening round where we had a smaller group kind of pre-select a handful of finalists, and then had the broader Giving Circle members then vote for the winner. And then we actually just completed our second grant round. And so the winner there is a woman named Beatriz Limon. And so she covers issues that are important to the Latinx community in Arizona. So it's really great. And it's a cool thing about Giving Circles is that we'll be able to, keep in touch with these folks and kind of learn, one cool thing about, I guess, journalism is that the reporting, takes place over time. And so we'll be following their progress, and they'll always be, a flashlight fellow that we can hopefully cheerlead along.
And, philanthropists, you just lifted up something. You say you're going to follow them along. Philanthropists, we are known for not just giving the financial support for individuals and organizations, but it's that beyond the dollar advocacy and continued support that these individuals and organizations need. where do you feel for your grantees that where's your mind thinking of how you all will continue to support them kind of beyond the dollar?
Yeah, no, we're definitely excited about that. And you know, it is interesting. We're exploring ways that we can remain connected and remain helpful to the journalists over time. So we're definitely interested in like hearing about their progress and so forth. It's also there's an interesting component that might be specific to journalism that it's appropriate to have a healthy distance between kind of the donors and the journalists because it enables them to have that independence to pursue something using their own like editorial judgment and so forth. And so we're figuring out the right way to be supportive and so forth, while also providing that independence that's so important for the journalists. And we're also exploring ways we'd love to see sort of a nice cycle where it would be wonderful if we give grants to journalists and maybe some of them come back and decide to be on like the grants committee that screens once in the future. So we're hoping to figure out the right ways that everyone can kind of be supportive of one another.
And I asked you that on purpose, David, because again, this is part of the journey. As a news circle, there are so many other hundreds people out there that need inspiration. They are thinking about how they're going to get started. And so it just sounds like you're figuring it out as you're going with your membership, with your members and striking that balance of the rhythm of what works for you all in this first year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. At we were having some of our early meetings, like the first core group, and we're trying to scheme out all these grand plans of the specifics and how we would grow and how we do this. And then at some point we sat down and you were like, you know what? We can see there are like 5 people we can piece together right now. Like, what if we just brought together these 5 people and we pulled together enough money and we just did a round, and we found that like we were able to get to a level where it's like, okay, this grant can be meaningful for someone. And rather than trying to like figure the whole thing out immediately, we just figured, okay, let's just start going. And we just continue to just kind of like learn each week. And it feels like we are figuring it out as we go.
Love. Okay, so you talked about a little bit. What are two things that have been valuable to you to help you get Flashlight just off the ground? Since you all are going, learning as you go, but what
Yep.
has been helpful for you thus far in your journey?
Well, definitely shout out to Launchpad, which got one, the community of fellow Giving Circle leaders was really useful, and be able to go to a couple of those sessions where you can just learn from others, and also just like have the camaraderie to know that other people are figuring it out as well. So that was definitely very helpful. We were in a little bit of a unique situation because we were interested in giving to individual freelance journalists rather than nonprofits, and so that made it a little bit harder because with some of the Giving Circle platforms, there's a restriction that you can only give to nonprofits rather than to individuals, and so that actually led us down the path to incorporate as a 501c3. And so maybe I'm forgetting the exact resource. I'll have to look it up, maybe send you the link. But we found this platform where you could get a pro bono lawyer, and so we were able to like submit ourselves.
Was it Taproot, David?
I'm not sure if it was
Anyway, we'll
Taproot or
figure
it
it
was
out. Okay.
another one. Yeah,
Okay.
but it was nice because we were able to just put up a profile, talked about supporting the Giving Circle, supporting journalism, and had a handful of lawyers who came up and said, hey, we'd love to help you out. And so
Wow.
it was a little bit, it was, you don't really, before you learn, you don't really know how much work it's going to be to figure out the whole incorporating as a nonprofit path. But it turned out to be somewhat manageable, and it was also very helpful to have a lawyer who is working with us and pro bono.
So, before we wrap up, I want to turn personal to you. You seem so passionate about this work. I can feel it, and I believe it to be true. Just with you going through our program, And I'm wondering what does this legacy look like for you with starting this giving circle? Like what legacy do you want to leave behind through the work of your giving circle?
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, have worked, in the journalism industry for my career and have kind of seen firsthand how a lot of the most impactful journalism, you know, the number of people working at local newspapers has just fallen off a cliff over the past 20 years. And it's because um, it turns out that like Facebook and Google is better at doing advertising than local news. And so that revenue stream has really fallen off, and it means that there's a lot fewer reporters out there covering local news, doing investigative journalism. And of course, it's just a fundamental part of our democracy and sort of fundamental service that's important to society. And so it's really great. I'm hopeful. I was so excited. I learned about giving circles through the Next Gen Giving Circle in Washington D.C., which I know you've interviewed. I think one of the leaders there. And so when I learned about the Giving Circle model, I was like, this is like this type of journalism is in search of like additional funding mechanisms because the ones that have supported it in the past aren't working as well. And so I'm hopeful that we're piloting this as a potential way to fill that gap. And so I'm hopeful that that we can pioneer this in a way that it seems like it will be sustainable, and then perhaps inspire other people to try something similar.
Indeed. Well, what else do you want the people to know, David, like about anything else about just the collective, about Flashlight, about just investigative journalism? And I just want to just plug in that this is just so important because now more than ever, your work and what you all are doing is so important because we, here in the U.S., we know we live in a democracy, and everyone is like, there's some trust issues going on throughout our nation in terms of like, what's a good source to get information from, and people are just, they questioning everything. And I think now more than ever is a great time for folks to support and to gather news from those who are delivering it to us in digestible ways that we can understand, that will continue and hopefully encourage people to become more involved in community, give back, voting and all of those things that need to happen that actually will bring us together. So anything you have to share in this end will be great.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I would perhaps just say, our website is flashlightcollective.xyz. And so if folks are resonate with this work, there's a link there where you can sign up to get involved in the Giving Circle. And we're starting off as a group of people who are kind of deeply involved in the journalism industry, and we're also welcoming people who care about these issues. And a lot of Giving Circles are a way to learn about an issue, and so we see Flashlight as being a way that people can also learn about investigative journalism and how it's done and its role in society and so forth. And then, of course, if any investigative journalists are watching, also on the website is a place where you can submit to be considered for a grant.
That's absolutely perfect and a great way to end. David, I always end our segment by giving you my virtual flowers. If I had like a fake flowers, I would give it to you. I'm extremely proud of you, friend. And we see you and thank you for your advocacy, for your love, for investing in our communities, and also for informing us more about investigative journalism. I learned a lot today, and hopefully you all did too. So connect with Flashlight. They're doing amazing things. And David, again, thanks for being here and sharing your story with us today.
Thanks for having me.